Hello, friends, and welcome to the Pines. In today's stories, the beauty of the fall season is marred by the ugliest aspects of humanity. Jack O'Lantern. The crisp autumn air filled our lungs as my husband and I took our two kids, Ashley and Dylan, to the local fall festival. The pumpkin patch was vibrant with colors, and laughter surrounded us as families enjoyed hayrides, a petting zoo, and a corn maze. It felt like the perfect day to celebrate the season. As we entered the festival, a large, jolly, older man greeted us. His round face broke into a wide, toothy grin. "Welcome! Aren't these little ones adorable? You're going to have so much fun today." His name tag read Jack O'Lantern, and while he seemed friendly enough, there was something unsettling about the way he looked at our kids, an intensity that gave me pause. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was being overly cautious. Throughout the day, Jack kept popping up. Every time we turned around, there he was, a shadow lurking behind a pumpkin or peeking around a barn. His demeanor was always warm and inviting, but there was an underlying current of unease. At one point, he lifted Dylan effortlessly to help him onto a tractor. My husband shot him a glare. "We've got it, thanks," he said, pulling Dylan closer. Jack laughed it off, but I noticed his eyes linger on our son a bit too long. Once we reached the pumpkin patch, we let Ashley and Dylan run around with a bunch of other little kids. Their giggles mingled with the rustling of leaves as they darted in and out between the vines. Ashley, at 8, had gotten busy picking out the perfect pumpkin to carve. Dylan was set on finding the biggest one. He struggled with a gourd far too heavy for him. Laughing at his antics, my husband and I started talking about Halloween and then Thanksgiving, which we'd be hosting for the first time. I leaned my head on his shoulder and felt a momentary wave of contentment until it struck me. Where did Dylan go? I glanced around, panic clawing at my throat as I scanned the patch. "Where's Dylan?" I asked my husband. "He's right..." He cut himself short. "I thought he was right here," he said, his brow furrowing. We spotted Ashley and asked her where her brother was. "Jack is taking him to the bathroom," she said, pointing toward the edge of the patch. My husband bolted, heart pounding as he yelled, "Dylan! Dylan, stop!" I followed close behind, fear tightening around me. As we neared the edge of the pumpkin patch, we saw them, Dylan being led by the hand by Jack toward the parking lot. "Dylan!" my husband screamed. Dylan and Jack both looked back. Jack dropped Dylan's hand and took off running into the crowd. My husband was visibly shaken when he reached Dylan. "Are you okay, buddy?" he asked, hugging him tightly. Dylan nodded. "Jack said he was going to take me to the bathroom, but then he remembered he left something in his car." I wanted to scream. I wanted answers. "We need to talk to someone in charge," I said, my voice trembling as we marched to the ticket booth. When we explained what happened, the workers exchanged uneasy glances. "We don't have anyone named Jack O'Lantern working here," one of them replied, "and nobody matching that description. Most of our staff are high school kids." They called the police, and we spent what felt like an eternity waiting for them to arrive. By the time they did, any hope of finding Jack had vanished. Days later, we were asked to come to the police station to view a photo lineup. My stomach churned as we entered the dim room. When the officer revealed the photos, I felt a chill. There he was, Jack O'Lantern, grinning as if he were part of a sick joke. The officers weren't surprised. "This man has a history," one explained. "He was convicted in the abduction of a little girl from a park a few years back. He spent a bit of time in prison. We've had reports of him showing up in similar places since his release." My heart raced as I thought of what could have happened if we had been just a minute slower. "We're so lucky," I whispered to my husband, my hand shaking. "What if?" That autumn day is forever etched in my mind. Every pumpkin decoration I pass fills me with dread, and I shudder to think of what could have happened. The cabin. It was early autumn 2021 when my friends and I, eager to finally escape the grips of the COVID shutdowns, made our way to a cabin nestled deep within the woods of a Virginia state park. There were 6 of us in total, 3 couples. My boyfriend Joe and I, Joe's best friend Paul and his wife Alice, and my best friend Andrea and her fiancé Tim. We were all so excited. The vibrant orange and golden leaves painted a picturesque backdrop, and we were ready to unwind and hike through nature's beauty. Joe led the way to the cabin which his grandparents owned. He told us how much fun he used to have here as a kid. However, as soon as we stepped foot inside, something felt a little off. The cabinets hung half open, and the remnants of empty food wrappers littered the counter, suggesting someone had taken refuge here. "Someone's been here," I said, stating the obvious. "Probably just someone who got lost or got caught out in a storm," Joe shrugged, dismissing my concerns. To me, it looked like someone had spent a significant amount of time here. But we pushed it aside, focusing instead on the excitement of the weekend. That night was filled with laughter, stories, and the warmth of a crackling fire. The next morning, before dawn even broke, Tim, the health nut of the group, wanted to go for a walk. "Just a quick one. I'll be back before you know it," he assured Andrea. We nodded, half asleep, urging him to take his phone. But as the sun rose and Alice dished out our scrambled eggs for breakfast, a gnawing dread took hold of us. Tim hadn't returned. Panic surged in Andrea's eyes as we called out for him. Minutes turned into hours. The more we called his name, the hollower our voices became. His phone rang out unanswered, and when we split into groups to search, the forest only swallowed our calls. Eventually, and far too late, we contacted the authorities. They assured us they would send someone in the morning. Frustrated and anxious, we sat together in the cabin, our laughter replaced with worry. The forest loomed outside, darkening with the twilight. That night, fear hung heavy in the air. Andrea was inconsolable, her sobs echoing off the wooden walls. Sleep eluded all of us. Just as we settled into a silence punctuated only by the crackling fire, we heard it. Yells, shouts, uncertain and shrill. At first we thought it might be Tim, but laughter followed, dissonant and mocking, a call and response. Whoever was out there wasn't alone. With each sound, our collective anxiety spiked. A bang on the door sent us all leaping to our feet. "Stay here," Joe commanded, grabbing the shotgun he kept for protection. He opened the door, gun raised, but there was nothing but darkness and the rustle of leaves outside. The noises persisted. They danced around our tiny cabin, taunting us, creeping ever closer. I could see fear mirrored in everyone's eyes. We huddled together in the living room, barely sleeping, our hearts pounding in sync. As dawn finally broke, the eerie silence took over. But when we stepped outside, dread washed over us once more. Our car had been vandalized, tires slashed and deep scrapes along the side. 2 park rangers arrived shortly after, taking statements and whispering among themselves. They promised a thorough search for Tim, but the bleakness of their expressions hinted at what they didn't say. Weeks turned into months. We returned to our normal lives, yet the cabin haunted our memories. Tim was still listed as missing. Each day, Andrea fought to hold back tears, and Joe often stared off into the distance, lost, blaming himself. As the years passed, the pain has dulled, but it's always there. Andrea stopped wearing her engagement ring after about a year, and just last week she went on a date for the first time, with the blessing and encouragement of Tim's family. As autumn approached again, I felt the weight of fallen leaves press down on me. We spent so much time trying to put our lives back together, but a shadow clings to our past, refusing to let go. As the weather cools and the leaves change color, I can't help but wonder if Tim could still somehow be out there somewhere. Running into danger. I'm a runner, and autumn has always held a special place in my heart. The golden and russet leaves, the crispness in the air, the quiet comfort of early morning runs. There's something about this season that just makes me feel alive. This year, I embarked on my first autumn in a charming new house nestled among tall oak trees in a picturesque suburb. I relished my morning jogs more than ever, the tranquility broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the bark of a friendly dog. One particular morning, as I rounded a familiar bend, a van glided by, its tinted windows reflecting the morning sunlight. It moved at an unusually slow pace, almost parallel to my jogging speed. Something about it made me uneasy, but I shook it off. Life was simple back then, after all. Days passed, and I began to spot the same van parked at various places along my routes. Initially, I dismissed it. Perhaps a contractor was working in the neighborhood? But with each passing day, it crept closer to my home. I wondered if the driver was watching me, then chuckled to myself for thinking such things. Surely I was overreacting. The alarm in my gut rang louder one morning when I stepped outside. I stopped short, stretching on my driveway to find the van parked just 2 houses down, lights off, engine silent. The windows were too dark to tell if anyone was inside. The pit in my stomach hardened. I considered retreating inside, curling up on my couch, but told myself I lived in a quaint neighborhood where the worst I had to worry about was the neighbor's overly friendly dog. I forced myself to run, glancing back toward the van. It remained there, unmoving. After 3 miles of powering through, I returned to find the van mysteriously absent. That absence left me puzzled. A contractor would have likely still been there working, right? I shrugged it off, diving into workday distractions. The following morning greeted me with blissful normalcy. No van in sight. I smiled and put in my best time in ages. The week dwindled on without incident, and I practiced a confident jog through the beautiful fall colors, not giving a passing thought to the ghostly vehicle. But everything shifted one night after a long day at work. A bowl of stew simmered away while I indulged in an episode of 90 Day Fiancé. I dozed on the sofa as my little dog, Maddie, nestled beside me. It was her growling that startled me awake. My heart raced and I gently shushed her, barely noticing an odd noise at the door. But then, an unmistakable jiggle of the doorknob. My heart sank. The knob jiggled again. Someone was trying to get in. Adrenaline surged. I grabbed my phone, edging toward the window to peek out. No one was there. Maybe it was just a gust of wind? But moments later, loud banging erupted from the back of the house. Panic gripped me. This wasn't knocking. Someone was trying to break the door down. I dashed upstairs, Maddie tucked under my arm, and locked ourselves in my bedroom. I dialed 911 and told them what was going on. Lock the door and stay quiet, the operator on the line urged. But my mind raced. Crashing noises, footsteps, then silence, interrupted only by Maddie's anxious yips. As I pressed my ear to the door, I heard crashes downstairs. I prayed whoever it was only wanted to rob me. More thuds and crashes, then the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. I took Maddie and retreated further into the master bathroom, locking that door. It was harder to hear where the intruder was, but now at least there were 2 locked doors between us, instead of just one. I tried to keep Maddie muffled so she wouldn't draw his attention, but after a loud crash in the hall, she wriggled free and let out 3 sharp barks. I grabbed her again, but knew it was too late. There was silence for a long moment, and then pounding on my bedroom door. Tears ran down my face as I carried Maddie into the tub, lying down inside. I could hear the bedroom door cracking and splintering. I could picture the hinges being torn from the wood. Then a louder crash, and I knew he was in. Now all that stood between us was the bathroom door. It started to shake. Suddenly sirens wailed from nearby, piercing the tension like glass shattering. Please hurry, I sobbed to myself. They had gotten the intruder's attention. The door wasn't shaking anymore. A second passed and I heard heavy footsteps again, but now they seemed to be moving away. Then they were back on the stairs, going down. Next I heard shouts, commands barked out, authority slicing through the chaos, and then an eerie calm filled the house. It was several minutes before I opened the bathroom door, Maddie in my arms, to be greeted by a friendly police officer. "We got him," he said. I walked downstairs to see a man I had never seen before being taken out of my house in handcuffs. It took me a moment to notice his van parked just down the street. My morning runs had been his reconnaissance, and the van wasn't a contractor. It was a predator hunting for an opportunity. I had been so foolish ignoring the signs my intuition had pressed upon me. That night, while gripping Maddie tightly, I was reminded, sometimes the whispers inside us are truths we just don't want to hear. Autumn may be beautiful, but it can also cloak shadows. I had barely escaped the darkness this time, but I knew I would trust my gut far more as the leaves continued to fall. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's stories, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you next time with more whispers from the pines.